Hello all you nightmare nerds, and welcome to an episode of Old Haunts, where we will be talking about my favorite place in the world, Bangor, Maine. Today's podcast will be a little different than your typical Nightmare Network show. Today I'll be taking more of an introspective approach to places that find ways to carve their place into our hearts and become something truly special, especially if their history is embedded in some of the most renowned horror works to ever be put to page. Welcome to Old Haunts. Hello, Nightmare Nerds, and welcome to our first episode of Old Haunts this season. Last season, and if you were a listener, we did this to Estes Park, where I got to go and stay at the famous Stanley Hotel where Stephen King wrote The Shining. And it was a really fun episode, and so I thought I would come back to it and do another Old Haunts for probably what is my favorite place in the world, which is Bangor, Maine. Some of this might be also a little familiar to you as well, because if you recall, last season we had a very special guest interview with Jamie Tinker from the Stephen King Tours of Maine, LLC, talking about the amazing tour service that he runs up there that takes you through all of the different spots from Stephen King's Maine. Because if you don't know this already, Bangor is essentially a, Derry, Maine from It is essentially a doppelganger for Bangor. So it takes you to all the famous spots that are, that are made famous by It, a bunch of other different books. So, we did talk about the tour specifically, but I essentially wanted to come back here and really talk about the town of Bangor, Maine, and, my experiences there and how it makes me feel to be able to go up there and spend my time up there. So I'm doing something different for this episode of Old Haunts. Usually I have a very detailed set of notes and bullet points that I want to bring up for podcasts, but today I have none of them. I have no notes. I have a word written on my screen that says Bangor, and I'm going to talk about it. And the reason I wanted to try it this way is because I kind of did that before, right? Like, we did it through, some of the Jamie Tinker episode, and I feel like my relationship with this town is something really emotional and really kind of cerebral, and it's something that, I have a few stories that I like to attribute to it. And I thought it would be cool to just try to get some sort of raw emotion into audio form and give it to you guys. So if you like it, let me know. I can certainly try more episodes like this where I'm just on the fly and kind of thinking off the top of my head and really kind of getting into the emotions. But if it doesn't work, that's also fine too. We will go back to a more rigid note-taking format and see where it goes. This might be a bit of a shorter episode, considering we are coming from the top of my head, but I'm going to try to see what happens and just give you guys good content and some good stories for the Nightmare Nerds. So the first time I went to Bangor was in 2018, 17, or 18. I can't remember which. And it was a really interesting experience for me because at the time, I was a really poor, struggling musician and college student for a long time. When I was in college, I wasn't able to really work a job to support myself because I had a full-time class schedule during the week, and every weekend I was coming home to play shows with my band. And it was very stressful, and the subject matter of one of our band's albums was called Between Two Cities, and it was about me feeling stuck between these two different places because I was really pulling myself thin and just going back and forth between these two chapters of my life, essentially, and it was really difficult. After I'd quit the band, I moved to Florida for a little bit, and I went to grad school down there, and that didn't really work out too well for me. So I came back home and enrolled in graduate school, where I currently am right now, working full time. And I love education. It was great, but I think part of me wanted to stay in college because I was a little scared of the real world, right? And I wasn't ready to go out into it. I was a little terrified that I wasn't prepared, mostly because I was stretching myself so thin throughout my Maine college years that I was wondering, did I even learn how to do anything? Because all I remember is driving back and forth a million times. And so the result of this 8-year period of adulthood really was the fact that I really didn't have a lot of money. And it was a very stressful time, and as I'm sure most of you can commiserate with, being a full-time student, even when you have a full-time job, is very stressful. And and I was really in a bad place for a while because I couldn't support myself completely. I was living at home with my parents. They were helping me out as much as they could, and they were very supportive about it, which is good for them. But it doesn't always make you feel great to have to dote yourself out on others like that. And because of this, I never paid for a vacation or went anywhere that I actually, not that I didn't want to go, but that I got to pick or wanted to go to my entire life. My family was really big Disney nerds, right? And so my mom, still to this day, they go to Disney every year. They don't go anywhere else. One time I asked them if they wanted to go to London, just to be like, hey, if you're going to go overseas, my mom, who's like afraid to not lock her door when she knows I'm coming over, like, will lock her door in a very, very nice suburb of New Jersey. I was like, well, if you're going to go overseas, maybe we could go to London. That'd be fine. And her response to me was, why would I want to go anywhere overseas where I could just see every country I want to at Epcot? So that's where I am right now with my parents. They found something that they love, and good for them. Love that for them. But I was going to Disney like every year with my parents because that's where they wanted to go, and they were paying my way, which was nice. So, I never got to really pick where I got to go for my vacations, and in turn, I never really got to go somewhere I really wanted to. And it was a dream of mine to go to Bangor since high school. Right? In high school was the first time I had ever read It by Stephen King. And if you know anything about me, it's my favorite book of all time. I've read it multiple times. When the It remake came out, I saw it 4 times in 4 days, which was fun. I saw it opening night. I saw it Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and then Monday night I went again for good measure. Sorry, that was Thursday to Sunday is what I meant. This is what happens when I don't have notes. I go off the fly. But anyway, Thursday to Sunday, I saw it every day when it came out. And I had known that they had offered the Stephen King tour up there for a long time, and it was something that I always wanted to do. But again, because of my financial condition, I always thought it was something that I was never going to be able to do. And so around comes 2017, 2018, I'm finally making a little bit of money, and I'm dating someone who also likes to travel, and she wants to go somewhere. And I say I would love to go to Maine, right? This is something I've always wanted to do. And to her fairness, she said, sure, let's go. And we went up there, and it was really like a movie in my mind, right? Bangor is so far up into Maine, and it's really not even that far up into Maine. If you look, there's like hundreds of miles north past Bangor up to the Canadian border. But we're driving north through Boston. We're based in Philadelphia, so we're driving north through Boston, and up towards New Hampshire, and we get through New Hampshire and into Maine, and we're passing through Portland, and I'm over here like, oh my gosh, I'm in Maine. That's Portland, Maine, as if like it's like a life-changing city. Portland's pretty awesome, but it's not like I was like, oh my God, that's Atlantis. That's what it felt like to me at the time. But so Portland is at the very the almost the border of Maine, so it's at the south of Maine, and Bangor is 2.5 hours north of Portland. Like, you just have to keep going up into this wooded wilderness, and driving on 95, like up through these woods, it feels like it, it felt like I was being like transported into a different world where I was going to arrive to Bangor and it wasn't actually going to be Bangor, right? It was going to be Derry. And that I was literally pulling a dark tower and crossing through a doorway into a thinny and out into a different level of the dark tower and into actually Derry itself, not Bangor. That's what it felt like the first time I went there. Spoiler alert, it did not happen. I ended up in Bangor, but that's just as great. That first trip in Bangor was something else. We had booked an Airbnb, and this was in the middle of summer, middle of July, and this was July 4th, actually. I remember we watched the fireworks over the Penobscot River, which was awesome. We'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, so this was 4th of July weekend, and it was so hot in Bangor, and we had booked an Airbnb, and I guess my bad, I didn't notice that the Airbnb site said they didn't have air conditioning. So we get to this Airbnb, and the lady hides the key for us under a rock, and we open the door, and she left us a note. This is her house that we are paying to stay at, and she left us a note that said, "Hey, it's way too hot in here. I went to my cabin on the lake. Enjoy the house." The house was too hot for the owner to even stay there, but still found it okay to rent it out to someone else. I don't think I slept less in my life than I did in that house. It was so difficult to fall asleep. We were pouring sweat. We were taking ice cold showers before bed and then hopping into the bed, opening all the windows, putting the ceiling fan on, which was going like, one revolution a minute. It was the worst ceiling fan in the world, and we couldn't breathe. And so one of the cool things about that was we kept waking up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep because we were so hot. And so we were like, we have to go somewhere to like eat and drink, or like at least drink. Like we need water. We're losing water like by the second through our sweat. And so we found the only place for breakfast that was open that we could find, and it was this kind of dive bar / breakfast towny place called Judy's. And if you've ever been to Bangor, or if you're a Bangor listener, you'll know Judy's. And so we go in there, and it feels like a towny biker bar, like a little dive bar, but they're serving breakfast and everything. And there's these Bangor locals in there for some reason at 5 in the morning. Pretty sure one of them was drinking a beer, and we are just sitting at this bar eating a delicious breakfast. And it was just a very surreal experience. So if you ever find yourself in Bangor with no air conditioning, or you just want a delicious breakfast, please go to Judy's. It was such a surreal experience, and it has such a place in my heart because of that. So Judy's was really, really, really great find. So we're staying in Bangor, and it's like way too hot. And the first thing on the first day that we have booked is the Stephen King tour. I was not going to stay there another night without going on this tour. If you want to know more about the Stephen King tour, you can go on their website, or you can listen to last year's season finale, an interview with Jamie Tinker from the Stephen King Tours of Maine LLC. But I'll give you a little bit of a summary just emotionally of what it was like to take that. Stephen King has been such an important influence to me throughout my entire life, and I have a really interesting relationship with the book It. And we're going to do a RIP reboots of It later on this season, where we dive a little deeper into this. So please be sure to keep an eye out for that. But so when I was little, my sister had rented the miniseries It with Tim Curry from Blockbuster when I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. And for whatever reason, and I thank her very much for this day, she let me watch it with her. My sister also hates scary movies. I don't know in what context she was like, "Yo, let's get this," but she got it. And so I watched it with her, and for whatever reason, I was obsessed with it. And I loved it, and I would always want to rent it when we went there. And my parents were like, "No, we don't want you to watch that anymore," because I was having nightmares about it. It really terrified me. And for my kindergarten graduation, so I must have been like 6 by this time, I think. Kindergarten graduation, my mum and pop-up were like, "Hey, what do you want for your kindergarten graduation?" And I told them, I want It on VHS. And so my grandparents, not having any idea what it is, I'm sure they went into a Suncoast and were like, yeah, I want it. And then they pointed him to the direction of this 2 VHS collection. And she sees a clown on the cover and she's like, oh, look, it's a little clown. He's going to, yeah, no wonder why he loves that, not knowing that it's the fuel of nightmares. So, I'm going to try to find them and post them on the Nightmare Network account. But I have, oh my God, I think they're in my basement. Oh my God, I'm going to go look for it after this and try to find it. But I have pictures of me. I have pictures of me like holding it in picture, like the VHS copy of it at my kindergarten graduation. And it's just, like, if there's ever, like, that's a funeral pic right there. When I die, that should be like number one. Check it out. Mike had it, at his kindergarten graduation. So later on in life, in high school is when I first decided to pick up the book and started reading it. And so I had this really surreal experience because it was already so connected with my childhood, like my very young childhood. And I was reading it again in high school, on the precipice of adulthood, of this transition period where you're getting ready to leave your childhood behind. And those are some major themes of the book. And so I had this really, really weird art imitates life moment with it as a story. And and that's why it became my favorite book, because I had this interesting connection to it, that it was mirroring my life. And so, I had such a connection I felt to Derry. And so the first time that I was standing outside of that Airbnb, because I couldn't stay inside anymore because I was dying of heat stroke, and watched the red, Stephen King Tours of Maine van pull up with Pennywise on the front, it was I almost cried. It was that visceral of an experience. And so we're taking this tour and we're going all over the town. And we're seeing, the canal where they throw Adrian Mellon in the beginning of the book, and we're seeing the standpipe where Stan sees the dead kids come down, and we're seeing the soar grate that inspired the novel, and we're seeing Derry, right? And we see the Paul Bunyan statue. We're seeing Derry, and it was everything I wanted. It was a surreal moment for me, absolutely. And I just remember being emotionally overwhelmed that day and just loving every second of it. And it's no wonder that since that first visit, I've been back there at least over 10 times. I go back maybe two or three times a year. I think 1 year I maxed out at 4. And I love Maine, and I love going up there. I love that feeling, that burst of serotonin that it gives me in my brain cells, right? Because it's such for me, I don't know, I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. But for me, it's such an interesting connection that I have to it, and I'm sure you guys have places like that too. Like, what's your favorite place in the world, and why do you feel that way? Mine's Bangor, Maine, and which I'm sure people from Bangor are like, really, this is your favorite place? But it's Bangor, Maine. So in the comments, like and subscribe. Let me know what your favorite place is, and tell me why. And I'm sure there's an emotional, reason for that. And for mine, it was this crazy kind of history I had with these narratives of art imitating life. So, so my first trip kind of keeps going along, and I have this really amazing experience with the Stephen King tour, and then there's so many other great things to love about this place. For example, there's this place called the Darling's Waterfront Pavilion, I think is what it's called, and the first time we were there, I saw Steve Miller Band there. Steve Miller Band was just playing in Bangor, right? So we went to a Steve Miller Band concert, and he played every Steve Miller Band song that you are aware of, I assure you. He played Abracadabra, so I got my dance on because that was a great time. And it was just such a cool experience. Being able to see this rock and roll legend in a town that I was convinced wasn't even real. So this was 4th of July weekend too. So there was parades and celebrations, and there's an amazing downtown area with all these little, boutiques and shops, and I have my little my little traditions whenever I go there now. me and my current girlfriend, we have a tradition where every time we go to Bangor now, we make sure to spend some time in the downtown area and go to one specific antique shop, and we'll walk around the antique shop, try to find something cool, and at the very least we'll leave with at least 5 or 6 packets of like vintage 1990s baseball cards, which they have there, and they're like 50 cents a pack. So we'll buy like 5-6 packs of them, and then we'll go down to Sea Dog Brewing Company, which is right on the Penobscot River, and we'll drink a beer while we're opening baseball card packs and like watch the river and everything. And it's just a really it's one of those things where it puts me in my happy place. And there's a lot of things about Bangor that put me in my happy place. In my older years, I've developed quite a taste for the craft beer, and there's some amazing breweries in the area. All not a sponsor, by the way, but I'll give you guys some drops. Mason's, 2 Feet, Gagan's, Blank Canvas, Black Bear. They're all great. And Mason's Brewing Company, if you're ever in Brewer, Maine, which is right across the river from Bangor, boasts my favorite beer of all time, which is the Ghost Reaper IPA, which is an IPA made with ghost peppers, brewed with ghost peppers, and it's my favorite beer. And I have another tradition. Every year at Christmas time for the past 2 years, I intend to do this. I make a day trip up to Maine. In between on the weekends in between jobs, and so I'll drive 8 hours up there, have lunch at Mason's, buy a case of Ghost Pepper IPA, and then go look at all my Stephen King stuff, take a ride around, say like, oh look, it's Steve's house, oh look, it's the standpipe, grab a real Maine whoopie pie from Ledbetter's and a bottle of Moxie. And then I'll with my case of Ghost Pepper beer, I will drive all the way back down, get home after midnight, and spend almost 16 hours on the road in one day. And this past year, one of my buddies, Lou, who Lou actually does he wrote the intro music for Nightmare Network. So everybody give it up for Lou. He accompanied me on this trip in my madness, and he, as far as I know, he had a great time. And it's really important to me because I have this great beer that's only brewed in this one place. It's only brewed like 1 or 2 times a year, and I can get a whole case of it, and I can bring it to my family and friends for Christmas and be able to share that with them. It also has a really special place for me because growing up, my I don't know if I told you this, but my mother and father were not very outdoorsy people. They only really wanted to go to Disney. So I never really got to camp or hike or anything, and I never spent a lot of time outside. And as I got older and I got more active in my life and more fit, I wanted to spend time outside in nature. Like, I love nature. And I didn't know that about myself until my middle to late 20s, that I enjoyed being outside and being in nature. And the first time we ever went to Bangor, because the Airbnb we were staying at was so hot, we couldn't stay there another night. So we called every campsite we possibly could in Acadia National Park, and to see if they had an opening. And this was 4th of July weekend in Acadia. Like, that's a difficult thing. And we finally found one that had one night open that night. And so we went out immediately. We didn't have any camping gear. We bought all of our camping gear and went down there and stayed at night. And we're finally like, oh my God, we're able to breathe. But while we were there, that was the first mountain I ever climbed, was Door Mountain. The Door Mountain Ladder Trail in Acadia National Park was the first ever mountain I climbed, which, if you know anything about the Door Mountain Ladder Trail, that is not like an easy first trail. There's literally a ladder like stapled into the side of a rock that's on like an angle upward towards the sky, and you have to like jump up on this rock and grab them, and you're like on the side of a mountain. So you're like, I don't know how I did it at the time, because that was my first experience to climbing mountains. My first two were the Door Mountain Ladder Trail and the Beehive, which, if you know anything about the Beehive, it's literally climbing a cliff face with like iron rungs stapled into the side of the wall. And but once you get to the top, you have these beautiful views of Sand Beach from Acadia, and it's such a special place to me now. Acadia is also one of my favorite places in the world, because of the nature and because of that first experience I ever got to have climbing those mountains, and really, it was my first experience of freedom. I would say, in nature, being able to stay out there and do kind of what I want to do. And it always has a very, very large place in my heart because of that. We are going back again this summer, and I just spent I've been spending like so many days like plotting out all of the things. Because usually when we go there, we stay in Bangor for 2 or 3 nights. And we'll do our Stephen King tours, our brewery tours. We'll eat at all of our favorite places. We'll get as many baseball cards as we possibly can. And then we either drive down to Bar Harbor for a day, or we'll spend one night camping in Acadia. Very rarely have I ever spent more than one night. And last year we scheduled a trip with it was me, my girlfriend, her brother, and his girlfriend. And we were finally staying 3 nights in Acadia, and we were so excited about it because I've been there quite a bit, but I've never done things like hiked Cadillac Mountain, right? And I've always wanted to do that, and we just never seem to have the time while we're there because there's a whole bunch of other stuff we have to do. So we finally booked 3 nights there, and we were like, we're gonna do all of the hikes, and we got there, and it was pouring rain for all 3 days we were there, to the point where we were soaked and miserable at our campsite. There was one brief reprieve, and we wanted to climb the Beehive, but we couldn't because it was so slick and slippery. So we're like, well, we can't do that. So we ended up hiking the Beach Trail, which has one of the greatest views ever, and it's a very manageable trail, at least up to the there's a word name for it, I can't remember the name, but up to the point where you can have this really great view. So I highly recommend the Beach Trail. But we couldn't do anything, so we were stuck in our tents and not really doing anything. And the one day we had booked a whale watching tour, and we were so excited for that, but that canceled because of the weather. And so we were like, what do we even do? So what we did instead was we booked a night at the Harborside, which is this really fancy hotel that's like over the water in Frenchman's Bay. And the weather finally cleared up the last day we were there. And what we decided to do is we took a little boat cruise on the harbor, not out into the ocean, to see whales. And it was still even with all that rain, was an amazing experience. And it just gives me joy to be there. The air is so clear, you can just feel it in your lungs. And so we're very excited because this time around we are planning to climb Cadillac Mountain, and we're going to maybe do the Penobscot Mountain Trail or the Acadia Mountain of Man of War. And there's a whole bunch of trails that we've always wanted to do that we never had a chance to. And this is our time to do it. So we are quite stoked on that. But and there's so many great memories I have just going up there. And since that first time, I've been back probably over 10 times. And when I first started dating my new girlfriend, not my new girlfriend, we've been dating for over 2 years, but when I first started dating my girlfriend now, she had never been there and I had. And I guess there was this kind of like emotional part of me that was a little bit worried about like, is it okay to share this amazing experience that I had with someone else with you? Which was a silly thought, because at the end of the day, it was my experience and no one was going to take that away from me. Not an old relationship, not anything else. My relationship with Bangor was my relationship, and it was so special to me that it's in me to want to share that with the people that are closest to me. So I ended up taking Nicole, my girlfriend, up there, and I don't know if she's doing it. I don't know if she says it just to appease me, but she fell in love with it too. We have such amazing times up there, and she is not a Stephen King fan, and she's taken the Stephen King tour with me 3 or 4 times, I think. And, she's always a great sport about it, and she seems to really enjoy it. So it's special to me to be able to share that special place, with the people that are closest to me. And it's why, I bring my friends up there, like my friend Lou, who is able to come up there. I was able to share this experience with him. And it's funny to me because on the outside, I'm pretty sure like anybody I bring there is like, yeah, this is cool, but like this is also just a normal town in the middle of nowhere. Like you could do things in Bangor that you could do anywhere else except for the Stephen King tour, right? But it has that special connection to me. And I love that. And I love experiencing places that have special connections to other people, right? I love being able to go places that mean something to my friends and my family and really understand what it is that's special to them and that makes them tick. So, please let me know in these comments. I want to know what you think is your special place and why is it important to you and why you like to bring, why you like to share that with other people. Actually, no one in my family has been up to Bangor, and I think that's changing this summer, which is really exciting for me. I think maybe my parents and maybe one of my siblings is going to come up there with me, and I can show them. This is why I come up here. This is why I have fun. This is my special place. And by all means, I am forcing them to do the Stephen King tour. Nobody is stopping me. It's like, when you're like a little kid and you meet new people and you're just like, oh, this is a new person. They need to know everything about me. Oh, so you grab their hand. You're like, okay, so this is my favorite toy. This is my favorite place to sit. This is my favorite place to eat my snacks. I feel that way when I go to Bangor. I feel like I'm a little kid again, and that I get to share these beautiful things with people that I love, and that's what makes it such a special place for me. And I know you guys have a special place in your heart too that you like to take people to. It feels like it's become a part of your personality. It feels like it's become a part of who you are. And I would love for you to let me know on our Instagram, our Facebook, our YouTube, wherever you can comment. What is that special place for you? And why do you love bringing people there? What do you make people do when you go there? Is there a Stephen King tour for you where you go that it's something that you have to do whenever you go? And trust me, it's getting a little expensive to keep going up there and shoveling money into a tour I've taken 4 times already, but by golly, I'm still going to do it. So please, like I said, please like and subscribe and let me know wherever it is that you go that is your special place. And please also let me know if there are any other old haunts, any spooky locales, and any terrifying trips that you take that you would like to be featured on the Nightmare Network podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It's a little shorter than normal, but this was a really fun episode to talk about something that was really, really important to me. So sounding off here from the Nightmare Network production office. Have a good one, Nightmare Nerds. Thanks for tuning in to Season 2 of Nightmare Network. Remember to like and subscribe and follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for updates regarding all things terrifying. Is there a movie or TV series you want us to talk about on our podcast? DM us and let us know. Remember, here at Nightmare Network, you share your scares.